Ready? 3, 2, 1.
Somewhere along the way, we've lost the characteristic of resourcefulness. We are extremely wasteful. Our industry was kind of built on unbridled destruction and consumption of natural resource. That starts with just understanding what we already have. We're not even scratching the surface of that. I'm a builder, my dad's a builder. We come from a line of builders. Coming from pretty modest upbringing, we've always been really resourceful as a family. When I became a builder, I was finding it really difficult to use existing materials on any scale in my construction projects. There was so much resistance. I just realized that if I wanted to make it easy, I would need to set up my own business and bring it all in-house. I started Revival about 7 years ago. We are a sustainable building practice that has the ability to bring projects to life. If it's using existing materials, we can certify it, we can present as principal contractor, we can engineer it.
That's what you said.
We don't own any of these materials. We're just holding them for people, helping them understand the value of what they already own. We've become particularly focused on trying to keep those materials on the site they came from. You're not sending anything to landfill, you're not leaving a footprint there, you're not creating and consuming new materials. There's a really good line on Sonic the Hedgehog movie where they say, "The moment chooses you." I didn't start out with any super definitive aspiration. I'm just a resourceful person, uncomfortable with excruciating levels of waste. I guess if I was a businessman, I'd call it a gap in the market, but I'm definitely not a businessman, so I just quote Sonic the Hedgehog films. We're choosing not to seek to make a profit out of it. We invest in these things because we think they're gonna make a change in the industry. Awareness around the levels of waste generated by the construction industry is generally low. I think in Australia we're up to 30 million tonnes a year that goes to landfill just from the construction industry. Really hard to comprehend what 30 million tonnes looks like. I guess words matter, and the word waste isn't appropriate. A lot of the existing materials that we work with, when we deconstruct them and we handle them responsibly, they can be raw material again in a matter of minutes. So how could you possibly refer to that as waste? They're some of the most incredible materials in the world. The typical process when we demolish existing buildings, if there's any perceived value or resale opportunity, those materials will be sold. Materials that have no perceived value or people think it's not worth trying to sell them, those materials are considered waste and they'll go to landfill. Things like destroyed timber and plasterboard, things that there's no current clear path of recycling, these are your real classic culprits for landfill. Our first zero footprint repurposing hub was on Farrar Street in South Melbourne. There was 2 developers working side by side. Half the city block was demolished, and about 12 months later, the remaining half was scheduled to be demolished. So there was an incredible opportunity to salvage all the materials from one half of a city block and wheel them into the remaining half and lease that space as a workshop. After the salvage mission, we started channeling those materials into a variety of local projects. Casa de Vinos Whiskey Bar is 500 metres from our South Melbourne repurposing hub. We designed and engineered and built the whiskey bar exclusively using timber from the Farrar Street salvage mission. 1280 ceramics, the interiors was completed using materials from Farrar Street, but the shop front we designed and built using ceiling beams that were in the shop that the owner wanted to get rid of. Rude Boy Burger used recycled timbers from Farrar Street. We built a new front counter for their main service area and a new takeaway window. A fundamental change which we need to see come about is different stakeholders taking accountability for what we send to landfill or how we utilize existing materials. I have a dream of demolition plan. Every single element on that page noted for demolition has an associated note or instruction around what is to become of those materials, how they're to be handled, where they're to go, how they might be repurposed. Buildings of any scale, there's no way that you have a use for every single component of that building. But if you've reached a conclusion that you're going to take accountability for those existing materials and how they're handled, I expect we'll see some really creative outcomes and collaborations.
Psst. Want to see something we've been working on? Never Too Small Volume 2 is available for pre-order from our store at nevertoosmall.com, with books shipping in February 2024. I know, soon. You're welcome.
We're here in West Melbourne on a Perry Projects development site. It's the site of a former flour mill dating back to 1906. Everything's been here for nearly 120 years. We've got staircases, we've got timber floors, we've got timber hoppers, incredible hardware and old machinery. We're here to identify the opportunity for reuse of existing materials on this site and to facilitate that process from deconstruction through to incorporating the existing materials in the new design development. Perhaps what's most engaging about a site like this is that despite the age and the long-term use, there's still one degree of separation from being raw materials again.
Most of the materials that have been salvaged were part of a large flour hopper, which is kind of like a lift shaft with over a century of the flour cascading down the inside of the shaft. It's literally worn the timber away the way the ocean wears away a stone. You can see the story of the building's former use literally ingrained on the materials. How we celebrate that and put that narrative at the forefront of the design is yet to be told.
We describe this project as the poster child for adaptive reuse. The investment in working with the existing building is unprecedented. This building's about 100 years old. In more recent times, it was the home of PBS community radio for about 25 years. And we're converting it into the head office for Bar Studio, who are a company who prepare interior designs for hotels all around the world. We've got a wide variety of timber species. These roof trusses are old Douglas fir, most likely from North America. The lining boards you can see up here are Baltic pine. We've got the Jarrah columns, which were holding up the first floor for 100 years. We think that when we exposed the stumps of the Jarrah columns to oxygen, it caused the rot to speed up. An engineering decision was made that we needed to replace all of the structural columns and introduce structural steel. And we've got all of the Jarrah timber back at our repurposing hub. Every single column will be brought back into this job in one way or another. So there's 25 structural columns from our job on Easy Street. Across those 25 columns, we've calculated 3 tons of sequestered carbon. Sequestered carbon is all about the past, and it's calculating how much carbon something sucked out the atmosphere while it was alive. When you dump timber like this in landfill, it typically gets burned, which releases all the carbon that it's sequestered back into the atmosphere, or it decomposes in the ground, which does the same thing. All the amazing environmental work that tree did for 100 years by sucking carbon out the atmosphere, you just ruin it in one irresponsible moment. So this vanity is a piece that we've made out of the Jarrah columns. It held up a 1,000 square metre building for 100 years. This is a solid piece of copper that we think was part of some really old school electrical componentry that we found in the roof space on site. We came up with this detail using the copper as screw caps to connect the leg to the frame. What's quite exciting about these bathroom vanities, these will be positioned within about 5 metres from where the existing columns stood for the last 100 years. Recycled Jarrah like this, that's old growth, it's not something you can just go and find at a timber yard or a second-hand timber merchant. So, I mean, I'm a little bit biased, but I would say it's priceless. People are comfortable with the cheapest and the fastest approach, and usually that means knocking down the bricks and having them taken off site. The minute you suggest something like, why don't we keep them on site, why don't we clean them, why don't we use them, you're pushing people out of their comfort zones, and you're suggesting logistical planning that people haven't had to accommodate before. And I guess there's typically so much pressure on design and construction that accommodating any additional logistical planning is an absolute fucking nightmare. We've demolished tens of thousands of bricks. Every single demolished brick has been kept on site and assessed. These locally manufactured bricks, they've been structured for 100 years. And in 60 seconds to 2 minutes, we can clean them and they're raw material, ready for another 100 years. Understanding the commercial balance between the investment in preparation for reuse versus the cost that you pay for taking them off-site or paying for recycled bricks to come from another site, the commercial reality of what we propose, that's something we get confident about really quickly. If you can clean a brick in 60 seconds, that's 60 bricks an hour. But the cost of 60 bricks if you buy a new one is $240.
If someone does an 8-hour day, they could do 480 bricks.
Yeah, I mean, even if you scale that back a little bit to allow for a little bit of downtime, it's still a massive commercial upside to use what you already have on site. As a community and as industry, we have to accept the cost of being sustainable. We've been too clever. We've come up with ways to be extremely cheap. Throwing stuff away and buying in new stuff is literally cheaper than using what you already have sometimes. We have to arrest the perverted rationale that it should be cheaper. We have to prioritize sustainability over the lowest possible price. I had this epiphany moment where I realized that to win the war on waste, we need community-led solutions. And if it's left up to the individual or, one organization, we're not going to solve the problem.
So the Revival Cooperative.
That was how we came up with our Revival Cooperative, which is the app that we've built that just connects people in the community and keeps each other informed about existing materials that we no longer have a use for and see if anybody has a use for them. We don't make any money from the app. The app is free to download and free to use. It's not the world's best business plan. It's a community-led solution that's literally just bringing people together and introducing cohesion and communication amongst people who are aligned in their motivation to decrease what we send to landfill. Trees need to come down in our city for a variety of different reasons. It might be tree age, tree health, new development. A lot of them are timbers that you can't get hold of, so they're really unique, special trees that have been a part of the community for a long time. Because of the perceived barriers to entry around repurposing trees that are cut down, unfortunately, the most common outcome is these trees get mulched. Our tree recovery initiative involves storing of trees, the handling of trees. We mill the timber here on our timber mill and we dry the timber in the kiln next door. And then we work with the owner of that resource to repurpose it into some application that they need to bring to life. So we've begun receiving trees from Melbourne CBD. We're working with Development Victoria. We've been receiving London plane trees and ficus trees
that need to come out as part of that overall development. And those trees are going to be repurposed back into that development. We're not here to sell timber. We don't sell any material. We just help you utilize that existing resource, make that accessible, make that really easy.
We're not going to be making any money out of this venture. My agenda is to demonstrate how we can change the way we approach trees that we have to cut down. There's a real absence of understanding in our community around the scale of opportunity that is right in front of us and immediately available. Using existing materials is the most significant and most immediate impact you can make in regards to adopting a sustainable approach to design and construction.
I can't go and paint the front of my house whatever colour I want, but I can knock down the whole thing and put it all into landfill.
I feel like our role at Revival is vital. There's not any other businesses doing what we're doing. A big part of what we do is help people be resourceful. That's a really special feeling. Through our actions, if we can empower different stakeholders and different professionals in the industry to do what they can to be more sustainable, that's best case scenario. If we call something waste, it's never going to be perceived as a really vital, integral part of new creation. We're literally surrounded by an abundance of existing materials. If we approach them resourcefully, we can do wonderful things with them.